includes initiatives that engage local leadership and support resilience. Please welcome Phoebe. You want this here? You want to hold it?
I'll hold it so I don't have to
And I'll
yell.
keep time for you.
Yeah, tell me. That's enough.
I'll give you a 5-minute mark and then one.
Okay. And about how many minutes? Just 30. Okay. That's a lot of time.
Q&A in there too. So you want to do 20 and 10 or 25 and 5, whatever.
Okay, thank you so much. And good morning. Koatsi Hopa. Again, my name's Phoebe Suina, and I'm from Cochiti and San Felipe Pueblos. Wear many hats, and good to see a lot of friends. My fellow NAD, Carnell Chosa is here too. Friends I've seen. So wonderful to see everybody. And in person, every event that I go to in person, I'm like, oh, we took this for granted, right? So I cherish it. I cherish it. Are you okay in the sun? You want to scoot a little bit? Okay, good. I know the sun is pretty strong, but it gives blessings, right? So today I just, your talk was wonderful this morning and it resonated. There was things I was like, yeah, jumping up over there. So thank you for that. Appreciate it. And I think, yeah, in talking with various groups such as this, preaching to the choir, even talking to Casey here, like, the little switch thing. And I'm like, no, we're still talking. I want to hear more. We want to connect with each other, and policymakers like, and that work on policy like Ms. Hughes. We're all in this together, right? We're all in here together. And one of the things I always like to share with everybody as we stand here today, and I don't know if this was done earlier, but we're on the ancestral lands of the Pueblos, of our indigenous peoples, our brothers and sisters that were here before. And I always share this with my kiddos too, because there's big old buildings and development and everything, but where we're at, there's history here. There's living spirits here. There's still living things like we heard about earlier. And if we can be mindful of that, ground ourselves in that, that also allows us to respect each other and work together on this big challenge that we have, that we're all navigating. We're all in this together. We have to navigate that, and not for us. I was brought up that what I'm doing today, it's not for me. It's for all of my kiddos and all of the little ones yet to be born and yet to come. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about indigenous knowledge and perspective on land and water stewardship today. And I think one of the things that I'd like to try to bring is the understanding that, I don't know where I point this. Do I point it over there? Oh. The importance of stewardship and of water and land for sustenance. As Pueblo people, we've been in this land since time immemorial, and we're still here. And many of the resources that my great grandmothers and grandfathers utilized, I was just sharing with Casey a story of my kids planting blue corn that probably has been carried down for thousands of years. That's resiliency, right? That's resiliency of that one seed to be carried down through all of those generations to my little boy who's now 9, planting those in the ground and understanding that connectivity to way back. Hamahake is what we call it, way back when. And it was all because of this balance. And I like to talk about balance because even when we achieve balance, the next second we're out of balance. We're always working. It's not something that you achieve and you're like, yeah, I got it. We have to keep working at it. We have to keep working at it. And one of the elders once told me, here in the Pueblo country, as he called it, Kukit at Cochiti, he said, we were always meant not to have too much, not to be too easy, because then we're out of balance. And then we start taking things for granted. We start taking for granted that it rains and we have water. And I think about that when I turn the water on every morning. And I'm like, wow, back in the day, we had to go to the river or go to a spring and haul it over just to have water to drink and cook with. And so this whole balance, I think, even when we talk about the field, we talk about how nothing was really perfect. And actually, like imperfection or perfection is like a concept that is not like, we don't have a word for that in our indigenous ways, because there's always, and my grandpa's sister, she was a pottery maker. And I remember she gave me this little pottery one time. And when she gave it to me, it was like a little bit offset. And she was telling me, sharing with me, that this imperfect pottery is actually beautiful. Through its imperfections is the beauty of the pottery, because it didn't sit right. It was a little bit offset, but you knew it was genuine. You knew it was for real, because it came from her hands. It came from all the love and the work that she put in there. Just like our land, it's not perfect. And there's this one painting from a painter from Cochiti, where the land is like upslope, and it shows that we didn't have flat lands. We didn't that only came in when everybody said, hey, we're gonna make it easy for you. We're gonna have flat land, so when you flood irrigate, it's gonna be like nice and smooth and everything. Oh, now you wanna have easy water access, where you push the button and it's in a concrete channel going down. There's a reason why water goes like this in the China, in the river. That's its life. That's how it lives. As you were talking about earlier, water is life, but it also has life. It has a heart, it has a spirit. We have a name for it. And when things have names, they're alive. And so that perspective, if we think about that living, it's hard to take for granted when you start talking about something having life. It's hard to say, oh yeah, we're just gonna buy and sell it. I loved what you said earlier, like water as a commodity. When you objectify it, yeah, go ahead, buy that, sell that, where it's real easy. Transfer water transfers, yeah. But now when you start saying, oh, I'm gonna transfer life, I'm gonna pay for that life, you're like, ooh, that's scary talk. We just got really dark really fast. But it's also in our words and how we frame things. And I know in our political climate right now, sometimes I feel like sometimes when I hear the rhetoric, it's like, please, show me. The words matter. How we talk to each other, how we identify stuff, how we explain stuff. Words matter. It doesn't mean that we can't disagree. We can disagree. Like we were talking about up north, the grazers and the Forest Service, we can disagree on maybe how to get there, but in the end, we really want resiliency. Can we go to those core values and core beliefs and core principles and core goals? In the end, I'm sure all of us, we hope that our children and those yet to come have resources. Right? I think we all can agree, but it's how we get there, right? That we all disagree on. And so one aspect I wanted to see if we can make this work is also looking at short-term, midterm, long-term views. In our state budgets, in our federal budgets, in our annual budgets, just by definition, it's very short-term, annual, right? And we're all of us, and me included, all think about annual budgets. And we all think about annual funding requests, state budget requests, all of that. I mean, Ms. Hughes was just sharing about funding, right? Then you have to spend it, right, in a certain time frame. So we're all then, without really being mindful, that we're all thinking about very short-term times. And again, our Pueblo people, my grandfathers, my great grandfathers, they thought like way long time, they were like, okay, we're going to bring this indigenous knowledge from 1,000 years ago into decision making today, so that we have resources for our children and those yet to be born in 1,000 years. So they weren't saying, oh, in the next year, we got to use this resource right now, got to use this money or whatever, water. But they said, wait, we've got to make sure we keep everything in balance. And that includes our resources, whether we're talking money, water, land, and so forth. And the other big thing is they thought big. They thought big. So in our songs, in our stories, I don't really like to use the word stories because it kind of minimizes the lessons. But that's the only other word I can think of in the English language. But like, they are our encyclopedias. They are our information bases, are all of these lessons and stories, and they can't be critiqued or criticized because we don't write them down. Our language is unwritten still. And I think in that decision and that guidance from our elders, there's also a reason and a beauty and a necessity and a survival need for not writing our language down. And our language is living, because the only way it can be, and those lessons be brought down, is to live it, to breathe life into those words, into the lessons, into the stories, and how are transmitted, how they're shared with everybody, even here today, and our children, to transmit that knowledge. And so in that, they also talked big picture of, in those stories and songs, even today, that the men still make up for our annual feast. And we're going to have our annual feast at San Felipe. Super excited, but super anxious too, because we're still sort of one foot in the pandemic, one foot out. And so, but I'm really excited, partly because I get to hear new songs that will be, again, just like the seed of corn that I talked about, are these values and these lessons that have been carried down since time immemorial. And in those songs, we talk about the big picture of water from the mountains and how it comes down to our farm fields so that we can, and to us, so that we can drink and irrigate our farm fields and have food. And there's that interconnectivity. And on this one, this is just one example. I have the Capilene watershed, which is in Bandelier. That right now, we were talking about the forest fires earlier, that has been completely devastated, multiple like punches in the gut to that watershed. And in that watershed, we have natural vegetative resources and we have water resources. That Hamahake, long time ago, grandmas and grandpas said, every year we must get water from this one location. It's a must. It's a must. And guess what? There's no water. And there's no water because we don't have the canopy. We don't have the trees. There's no water because, why don't we have the trees? Because of the multiple forest fires. So it snowed this year, but guess what happened to the snow? It ran off. It didn't soak in because we don't have that canopy anymore. right away, it melted and ran off to Texas. I'm just kidding. No, but it didn't have that time to soak in. But that's also, to me, how I see it is a data point that the land, the life in the soil is hurting too. I was listening to one of the soil scientists one time, and they were saying how much life is in the soil. So for the farmers here and the ranchers and land stewards, there's a lot of life in that soil. And when there's not life, what's on top isn't healthy either. And we minimize, or the life on top gets minimized as well. So that's the big picture as well. And so I keep pointing to the. So here's an example. This is the watershed that I was talking about, and it was completely denuded after the Las Conchas fire. I walked on that landscape, 6 inches of ash. I would go like this and it splash up. So we also lost the organic matter in that soil. So Imamo, poor mountain, she has to make her own soil now. And that's not a process that can happen in a year. So again, here we go, talking about time. We have to give the land time now to heal. We're out of balance, but we're like, we want you back right away because we need water. All of these things are interconnected, interdependent, interrelated. And if we don't have one of those things, how can the cycle keep going? And I didn't learn that from a book. Got to go a little faster here. This was an image from the National Weather Service that came out maybe like 15, 20 years ago. It's about the hydrological cycle, right? And I showed this to some policymakers, state engineer's office, governor's office, BOR. I said, wow, yeah, this is really interesting. Awesome, because glad you guys could catch up because my grandmas already knew it. They're painting it on potteries in the 1700s. We are the first hydrologists. We are the first soil scientists, botanists, archaeologists, engineers, architects in New Mexico, what we call New Mexico today. And we have the knowledge, we have the expertise that we've lived. And I said, and if you don't believe me, here's some more examples. Here's some more pottery. And if back in the day, we didn't draw pictures to sell, to make money. They were really what came from within and came from what we were experiencing at the time, and a depiction of what we saw in the environment. And now these are records of, shoot, we were the first hydrologists in this landscape. So I think for me, and I know I only have a few more minutes, I want to talk a little bit more, but one of the things that I think is so important is for all of us to have a conversation and continue to have conversations, build relationships that are built on respect of each other. Because I'm hopeful that even our Pueblo communities, our traditional communities continue to do that as well, internal to us as well. It's a every day, every year working battle. So our communities aren't perfect. We're not perfect. I'm only human too. I tell my kids, my mama makes mistakes. I'm ever making mistakes. Every day I make a mistake, I tell them. But that's okay. That gives us humility and humbleness, because we can't have a big head and know that we know everything. I need you to tell me what's behind me. I need you to tell me what's over there, because I'm looking at you. I can't see what's in the back of my head. So we all need each other, and we're all interdependent. but we also have to, I think, elevate the indigenous voice, the indigenous knowledge, and wisdom, because that has long, for centuries, been pushed to the side. And it shouldn't be a threat. It should be a exchange and a development of good working relationships and how we all move together. And I was telling a story, of our family to someone from Virginia, and I was telling them about the different peaks. I was naming them like Kootenai Hennet and Pinshishi, Gil Whitney. And I was on Zoom and I was pointing to them from my office in Cochiti. And he started crying. He said, "You know how lucky you are? You can speak your language and these places that have names. And that's where your grandparents and great, 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 great grandparents are from. And you know where you're from. You're from right there. You're from right there. And you can name them. And they're living in your life still. They're part of who you are." He said, "I'm from Virginia." He's an African American. "I'm in Albuquerque now. I can only go back maybe 200 years. You can go back thousands of years." And when he said that to me, I was like, yeah, we are blessed. But we want to make sure that our kids and future generations can have that blessing as well. So I'm in this. I'm happy to work with everybody and work through everything. Talk things through, especially points of conflict, because in the end, I'm looking at that long-term vision. And it doesn't mean, this was a quote, it doesn't mean that anybody's perspective should be tossed out. We all need to work on this together and see how we can balance. And even when we achieve it, we still have to keep working the very next day. And this was a good friend of mine, Lila June. She says, "Continue to learn from indigenous peoples around you, because we are carrying some of the most advanced wisdom on the planet in our knowledge systems." And that's really true. When I like that quote from her, because I tell my boyfriend, last piece of this talk, I tell my boyfriend, he didn't go to college, but he was raised by his grandfather who lived into his mid-hundreds. And I always tell him, and he knows his language, he knows Karis, he knows all, how to take care of the field, how to hunt, how to keep things in balance. And I tell him, you have a PhD in the way, our Pueblo way of life. You cannot pay for that education. That's worth more than any money. And so I always tell him, you're the doctor. I may have a master's degree, but you're the smart one. You're the wise one. So we have to elevate those voices too and respect that perspective as well. So thank you so much. I appreciate the time, and I see I'm trying to meet the time.
Much.
Thank you so much.
Woo. Wow, that was wonderful. Can you all hear me okay? Is this all right? We're going to do some Q&A, and of course, Phoebe will be here this afternoon, so you can get some one-on-one time too. But if you have any questions, raise your hand. I will pass you the mic.
Kind of a question, but kind of a comment, which was just wonderful. I really loved hearing your presentation today and the message that you're trying to convey. And it had me think of a couple things. One is, and I wish I could remember who it was and when it was. I know it was in Zoomlandia. It was some virtual, thing I was sitting in on. And there was an indigenous gentleman there who said, "We're so far behind, we're ahead." Mm-hmm. And I thought, that's it. That's so true. Because these knowledge systems, you're right, have thousands of years of experience and practice behind them. And there's a lot that can be said for including those at the table. And it's pertinent that we do that, But I also just wanted to share too, as someone who recently got her master's, and I was sharing this with Helga earlier too. One of the main reasons I went back to school was because having been in the field for 20 years and then seeing how many farmers' experiences were dismissed because they didn't have the 3 little letters after their name, or they didn't have the peer review publication, but they had Mother Nature review publication is what they had, And I realized that there's a need to have more translators and to help bridge the knowledge systems and to honor as many of them as we can and to bring them together to synthesize them. So I just wanted to thank you so much for your messages and also for the work that you do. It's fantastic.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Do we have any other questions? We've got time for one more before we move to our next speaker.
Just thank you for your words, sister. Very beautiful and touching, taking us to the root of what our humanity is about. And I just wanted to emphasize your words on balance and when we're out of balance. That's why the rains haven't come. That's why the snows don't come as heavy as they used to. In order for lightning to strike, in order for a storm to come, there has to be a balance of all of those elements, the heat, the cold, everything coming together to make lightning strike. And that's the sacred piece right there. That's what brings down the rain, but also the teaching there is that lightning can also bring fire. So that's that balance again happening within those atmospheres. So it's just, I really appreciate you bringing that in to the conversation, because balance isn't just how are we going to work together, but the balance is that true universal power that provides life for all of us. So I really appreciate you bringing that into the conversation and letting us reflect in our own way to what those words really mean.
Nature. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Phoebe.
All right. Sounds good. Good. And I think too, one other point is for policymakers, even myself now, I'm sitting on 3 different boards at the state level. Environmental Improvement Board. We just passed the ozone methane rules and regulations. I'm on the Renewable Energy Transmission Authority Board and on the Interstate Stream Commission. And one of the other things I think kind of stretching myself a little bit, but it's that perspective and being able to translate, right? Translate from the doers, the caretakers, the stewards that, and so we just need to also work with our children and those yet to be born to instill those lessons as well. So, I'm hopeful that the children also come up and understand that as well. And that, that gets into education and all of these everything is so interrelated and interdependent. I applaud everybody here that's working on different aspects of this challenge that we're all in together. Thank you.
And actually, we have one more question I want to give space for.
Thank you, Phoebe. Phoebe and I went to college together, so we've been friends for a while. But this morning, I was supposed to bring my mom today. She's a part of my fruit project, which I haven't shared with you about any of that yet. But she couldn't come because we had ceremony in Jemez, and she's making paper bread, like this old traditional form of bread making. And so she wasn't able to make it, but she started at 4 this morning, and I was chopping wood for her this morning at 6 and all of that. But part of her, and it comes out in your presentation, is her wish for, she's training young women, not children, but young women to be, that paper bread maker, which is a lost art almost.
Mhm.
And when you talk about engaging young people, what strategies or how do you advise us to engage young people in this work? Because it's so critical to continuing the legacy and the work that we're all engaged in.
Thank you, brother. And I think of Carnell as one of my brothers, my big brothers. Look up to him. For me, I think for the indigenous peoples and even the Hispanic communities is every single day we have a choice to be mindful of the language. When we have the opportunity to speak our language, speak it. We have a choice every time we open our mouth with our children, our young people. In the community of Jemez, your language is unique to your community. You must make that choice. Every opportunity to speak when the children are around, when the youth are around, when younger people, when older, anytime you're breathing those words into the universe, into the world, and making sure that they still live those words, because in those words are those lessons, is how to live, how to be. No, it's not I don't like to call it a religion. It's our way of life. And it's how we role model it. I didn't really realize that until I was a mama. And they tell us, Maya Anita, like our children are certain spirits. But do we treat the children in the Western world like that? If we did, we wouldn't be acting the way that we do sometimes. But it's to be mindful, and in every step we take, every word we say, everything we do, our children are watching. And it is to bring them along, which sometimes means we're not going to get the task done right away. We're not going to take care of the field right away, right? But that's okay. We have to engage them, include them. Hinasha, like, come along. Do the my daughter, I was making paper bread. I'm blessed and humbled that I do know how to make paper bread. And so I just brought her along. And I was like, she was 3 or 4. And there's certain times when you can, traditional practices. But me and my grandma, my Indian grandma, she was making some, and so she's like, "Come on, Phoebe." So because she knows I can make paper bread. So as one example, and so I brought my daughter along. And I don't know if you know how piki is made. So there's like this stone. It's a stone, and there's like flames on the side coming out, and you have to put your hand right on the stone, right? So my daughter, she was like 3 or 4. So she's watching me and my grandma making paper bread. And then she's like, just by being present, she's like, "Mama, hin." She was saying, me. And I'm like, there's flames going on, and you have to you have to do it a certain way, or you can burn your hand. I'm sure you watched your mom again. Like, how do people do this? And so I'm like, shoot, and it's also the willingness to have faith in our children and encourage that spirit and that passion and engagement and excitement of something that they want to learn. So I was like, okay, weigh the balance, right? The balance. Should I let her do it? And I let her do it. I let her, and my grandma, she was like, yes, you gotta let her, she was telling you that she wants to do it. It's from her heart. We were talking about that, the kids early, from your heart versus kicking them and forcing them to do it. She wanted to do it. So when you see that light bulb go off, that little sprout come out, right? Water it. Yeah, go for it. And it was a step in courage for me, because here's my 3-4-year-old daughter about to like put her hand on the super hot plates, and she had no idea. But thankfully I leaned on my grandma. So it's that intergenerational opportunities too. And sometimes, like I was talking to my grandma, we had a task, right? We had to make paper bread up to the knee, and we're like, oh, okay, this is gonna take us another half hour because we gotta teach her. But you know what? That was okay. We have to slow down, be mindful, and take hold of those opportunities that our children are engaged with, and they don't come along all the time. But I always see, like, my mom, I love her, but oftentimes when she was making, like, traditional foods or doing stuff, she wanted to get it done right away. So she's like, oh, no, go ahead, just sit there, I'll do it. Slow it down. So I try to be mindful of that. And then even if there's a young kid that's not related to me, and they want to learn, I'm like, heck yeah, come on, come to the field. Here's a hoe, here's a shovel. So just be embracing of that. And I try, Cornell, like, one of the things I take from my dad's mom, my grandma, every time I used to come to the house, she'd come out the house and she'd be like this. Embrace those opportunities, and take that time to hug and embrace and welcome those opportunities when they come, because they don't come all the time, and look for them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, we are going to transition into lunchtime, and then we're going to have Leonora present after. I think that structure will work really well. We're lucky to be a flexible crew here, as are all of you, adaptable. Sarah, do you want to welcome lunch or? Yes, Sam does. So thank you for that reminder. So we do have a photo release form that we would love everyone to sign. If you would not like your photo included in any of the photos that Sam has taken, please do let him know. He's waving back there so he can make sure not to get you in any photos. You can do that during lunch. He'll be back at the table where we've got the form there. So we have lunch set up. It's right around this corner to the right. It is a delicious 2 more minutes. Okay, perfect. Thank you. And we've got the Street Food Institute here, which is a wonderful local culinary extravaganza. I am always very excited when we have events locally, so we get to call on them. Their food is delicious, locally sourced, and they empower a bunch of folks in our community to follow culinary adventures and employment. So let's just take a moment to breathe. They'll be ready over there in probably a minute. We can set chairs up probably in the shade. There's a table over here. We can sit on the banco over there. So just make yourself feel comfortable and out of the sun if necessary. Don't forget to hydrate. Thank you all, and let's transition to lunch.